It all began the night we returned from my friend's burial. My wife and I were exhausted from the long drive, and neither of us spoke much on the way back. We had just lost a dear friend, and the silence felt appropriate. The weight of grief hung over us like a fog. Around midnight, as I lay in bed, something strange happened. My wife's phone rang, and at the exact same moment, mine did too. Half asleep, I reached over and silenced both phones. It didn't seem unusual. After all, it could have just been a wrong number or a call from someone who didn't realize the hour. My mind was too tired to process much. I rolled over and tried to sleep. The next morning, as the sunlight broke through the curtains, I decided to check the call log. Nothing. No missed calls, no number, just blank. I shrugged it off. But when my wife checked hers, it was the same. No record of a call. We both laughed at how tired we must have been. Maybe we had imagined it. But something about it lingered in my mind. The next night, at exactly midnight, it happened again. Both phones rang at the same time. We both sat up, this time more alert, more awake. But when we looked at the screen, there was no number. It was just blank. I reached out to answer, but my wife stopped me. "Leave it," she said quietly. "Let's check it in the morning." I nodded and silenced the phones again, but a creeping unease had begun to settle in my chest. It didn't make sense. The morning came, and once again, there was no record of the call. We both stared at the phones, confused. "Maybe it's the network," my wife said, trying to reason with herself. "It's probably just some weird glitch." We went about our day, and for the rest of it, nothing unusual happened. There were no calls, no strange occurrences, but deep inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It felt like something had shifted. The third night came, and as if in response to my unease, it happened again. The clock struck midnight, and once again, both phones rang simultaneously. I sat up slowly, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. This wasn't normal, but that wasn't all. When I looked down at the floor, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. Tiny ants, dozens of them, crawling across the bedroom floor. I bent down to sweep them away, but then I noticed something else. The bedroom door. It was slightly open. We never left it that way. We always made sure the door was fully closed before going to bed. I stood up, my pulse quickening. Something was off. Something wasn't right. I turned to my wife. "We need to talk to someone about this. This isn't just a coincidence." My wife looked at me, her eyes wide with concern. "Do you think it's the house? The phone calls? The ants? The door?" "I don't know," I said, my voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "But we need answers." I called my friend, the one who had just buried his wife. We had been friends for years, and I trusted him, but when I told him what was happening, he seemed distant. "Bro," I said, trying to explain. "Something strange is happening since that night. Every night at midnight, both our phones ring, but there's no number, no record, nothing." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could feel him processing the words. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but with a hint of tension. "Relax," he said slowly. "Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's the network. Just turn your phones off at night." His suggestion sounded reasonable, but something about it felt off. I didn't feel relieved by his words. In fact, I felt even more uneasy. That night, we followed his advice. We turned both phones off and stayed awake, watching, waiting. The clock struck midnight, and then both phones started ringing. Even though they were turned off, my heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't possible. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling. But my wife stopped me, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, don't answer it." I couldn't explain it, but something in her voice made me hesitate. She sounded genuinely scared, but I had to know. I pressed the answer button. The moment I did, the lights in the house went out. And just as suddenly, my wife's phone stopped ringing. I pressed the phone to my ear, my heart racing in my chest. There was nothing but silence. And then I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. My pulse spiked, and I held the phone closer, straining to hear. A faint crackling followed the breath, and then a voice. Help. The call ended abruptly, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. I checked my phone. No number, nothing. My wife checked hers. No record of the call, nothing at all. She stared at me, her face pale. "What did you hear?" she whispered. I hesitated before answering. I heard breathing, and then the word help. My wife's face turned even paler. "Did you recognize the voice?" she asked. I shook my head. No, I didn't. A cold breeze suddenly swept through the room, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. The curtains fluttered slightly, though the window was closed. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. "Something isn't right," I whispered. My wife gripped my arm tightly, her voice trembling. "Please, fix the lights. I need to see." I nodded, trying to stay calm. I stood up and walked toward the fuse box, my mind racing. My hands fumbled with the switch, and after what felt like an eternity, the lights flickered back on. But even with the lights back on, everything felt wrong. The air was thick with unease, and a chill settled in the room. We didn't speak. We just sat in silence, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my friend standing there, his expression serious. "Did the call come again?" he asked, his voice low. My wife nodded. "It did." I stepped aside to let him in, but as he walked past me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about him. He seemed off. He looked at us both, his eyes searching us. "I'll stay tonight," he said quietly. "I want to hear it myself." I wanted to refuse, to tell him that this wasn't something he needed to get involved with, but I couldn't find the words. "Are you sure?" I asked. "You just buried your wife. You shouldn't be here." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm here," he said softly. "We'll figure it out." I nodded, though something about his calmness made my skin crawl. As the day turned to night, my wife and I tried to settle into some semblance of normalcy, but it was hard. The house felt different, like it was holding its breath. And then, my friend returned. He entered carrying a small black bag, his movements deliberate. "I brought something," he said, his voice calm. "Something to help." I wasn't sure what he meant, but I didn't question him. He sat in the living room, placing the bag beside him, and we all waited. For what? I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling that whatever it was about to change everything. It wasn't until later that my wife pulled me aside in the kitchen. She was nervous, her face full of worry. "I don't trust him," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know why, but something feels wrong." I tried to calm her down. "You worry too much. I've known him for years. He's just trying to help." But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was right. Something wasn't right. As we returned to the living room, my friend poured wine from the bottle he'd brought. We all took a glass, but my wife hesitated. She didn't drink. "Not tonight," she said softly. But he didn't drink either. He just stared at her, his gaze intense, almost predatory. Minutes passed. I started to feel sleepy. Too sleepy. "I want to sleep," I muttered, my voice heavy with exhaustion. My wife turned to me, confused. "Sleep? It's too early," but I couldn't explain it. I just had to lie down. I sank into the couch, my eyes closing as the room grew darker. And then, everything changed.
Hold on, the video's not over yet. Head to the comments for a link to the full video on YouTube. Click it and watch the rest. Thanks for watching Empire Stories.